Okay, thank you for coming to the Fabricators Forum. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody attending today. So my name is Blake Christensen, and we're going to introduce the panelists here pretty quick. Blake Christensen, I own Valley View Granite. I started fabricating in high school in '97. Started my own company in 2003, located in northern Utah right now, approximately 140 employees, and we are a countertop fabricator. Go ahead, Chris. We appreciate Chris helping us today. We had somebody not show up or not able to attend today, and Chris is last minute helping us. So Chris Hildebrand.
My name is Chris Hildebrand. I've been fabricating since 1994. I started my shop in 2006 and quickly, within 4 years, took it to a digital fabrication facility, and we bought a new building in 2015, and now we employ about 14, 15 employees. Doing, excuse me, complete wet shop, no dust, no silica, complete automation. I don't run my shop very much anymore. I go in a couple times a month, check on people. Very good facility.
Is it on? Oh, I'm Jared Barlow with Countertop Source. We are just 2 hours north of here in the bottom of the state of Utah. So we started doing granite in 2008. So like 7, 8 is when we actually set up the shop. Completely digital. We have about 70 employees, producing quite a bit of volume. I've been in the industry, countertop industry. I mean, everybody liked to joke that I was born with a caulking finger. So I've been doing countertops for a long time. Started doing laminate and solid surface and switched to granite, and I like granite. So that's kind of the business.
Hi, I'm Joey Marcella. I am the co-founder, along with my father, of Mario & Son. We've been in business since 1991, so 31 years now. And in that time, our company has evolved a couple different times. We've gone from a small family-owned company to, in 2008, we were 45 employees doing big box stores. Now we have scaled back. Now we are doing still doing countertops, but a lot of more architectural work. So we do just about everything. We do all of the surfaces as well as cubic stone. Yeah, happy to be here today.
No, thank you. We're really excited. We have a great panelist, our panel of panelists, and a lot of knowledge. Going to learn a lot of things today. So we want this to be your time. We want to really make sure that we address a lot of what you as fabricators would like to hit. And these discussions can obviously go a lot of different ways. Machinery upgrades, company culture, material issues. All these things. We can really spend time on. We want to make sure that you guys have the time and input to focus on what we'd like to focus on. The three questions that we kind of would like you to think about, and then we'll circle back around to these, is what is your company's biggest challenge? What makes your company exceptional? And what makes your company stand out in the marketplace? We kind of have answered some of those questions ourselves and have something that we'd like to feel like we like to present. And we'll move to that and then kind of circle around. But as we're talking about some of these things, just think of those three questions and we'll come back to those. Oops. So Jared's going to talk a little bit about company culture and what makes Countertop Source exceptional with their company culture.
Yeah, so I like to think we're really good with culture. So we have an amazing culture. Everybody's looking to improve all the time. So I want to ask a couple questions. What is culture? Does anybody have an idea what culture is? Say it again.
It's the glue that binds everything together within an organization.
Yeah, the glue that holds everything together, definitely.
And I would also say that it's a reflection of the core values of the business, that all employees are basically following that same principles.
I really like that. He said it's the core values that everybody follows along with. What kind of culture do you guys have? I've heard, I mean, you guys ain't very responsive, but it's basically the conversation that says culture will eat your strategy for lunch. So if you don't have a good culture of employees all on the same page, culture means everybody's aligned. Everybody's aligned with your vision. So one culture might be different than another culture, but if that culture's aligned, it's just as good as a different culture if they're all aligned, all rowing in the same direction. The reason why I have this picture here is, you know, what's going to happen in a boat if somebody's not rowing in the same direction. Like, if you have people on your team that's rowing backwards while you're trying to go forward, are you going to go very far? You're probably not. So the biggest thing with our culture that we do, obviously I don't know how much time we have, is that there's 3 things that's required to build an outstanding culture. And the first thing is you have to teach people how to think. You have to teach them that their jobs are important. You have to teach them that your company and what they do is great. Number 2 is same as important. It's just as important as number 1, is you have to challenge them. And number 3 is you have to do it yourself. You have to be impeccable. So number 1 is teach people how to think. Number 2 is challenge them. Number 3 is be impeccable. And you can create an outstanding culture. Let me give you one example. So I had a CNC operator who was doing his job and he didn't understand why. He was like, I don't like my job. I was like, why don't you like your job? I don't know, I don't understand why. And I was like, my challenge to you is to look at that countertop as somebody's dream home. Like that surface in their home, they're gonna live with for the rest of their life. And the reason why they had Countertop Source do it is because they know that we're the best and we can do it. So my challenge to you is to look at that as somebody's dream home. And then I followed up with him a week later and he's like, I love my job way more now. Like what I do truly makes a difference in people's lives, people's homes. I also tell everybody that works for me, your job is just as important as my job. If you don't do what you do, I can't do what I do. And so I try to create the importance that everybody's job is important, that they need to love what they do, they need to make a difference. And I think that's the biggest thing with a culture, is get everybody aligned by teaching everybody what to think. And that's pretty much all I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
No, I really appreciate what was said about core values. You know, there's a great book that says that if you can get everybody to row in the same direction, you can dominate any industry. And I think that's true with culture. And your key as a business owner is to make sure that your team is rowing in that same direction. So I really appreciate this picture. I appreciate that slide. Aligning your culture with your core values is a big deal. But any questions on company culture? The lights are so bright, I think there was a hand over there.
Yeah, it's really hard to see over here, but what do you do as a company to team build, to get all of your employees on the same level? Do you have meetings every week? Do you have monthly meetings? Do you give your company goals for a team to tackle? That's one thing we do in my shop. You know, about once a month, we all get together. We look at what our whole company knows what all our sales were for the last month. They know what their next quota is going to be for the next month, and they work as a team together to achieve those goals. And I've seen a lot of fabrication shops where the owner and the manager does not have these discussions with their employees. They treat their employees just as a pawn within their company, and the company never grows, and they continue to turn employees over. So having a good culture, having a good team, having a team that discusses things with each other, it's key, and it's going to be even more key going forward as we continue to run into these labor shortages.
Yeah, I would agree, Chris, that I think culture is a big thing. That why do your employees want to work for you? Why do they want to be there? I heard a friend just a couple weeks ago said something that she was changing jobs. She was a project manager for a construction company, and she was changing jobs, and she said, "Hey, I'm going out to dinner with my team 2 weeks before they hire me and before I start." I thought that was kind of cool, to get to know the team on a social level, on a cultural level, and just to incorporate that into your company culture, but to really get to know the team on a personal level before your first day of work. I've heard the suggestion of how many times do you celebrate a new hire's first day? I mean, we throw all these parties when it's their last day, but celebrating their first day, and those are just two things that came to my mind. I don't know this. I did silence my phone. So anyways, anything to add there?
Yeah, you hear a lot of crying right now from everybody, wondering how they get and retain employees. That seems to be the big buzzword going on with everybody right now. And my advice to everybody would be you need to look within. I've been doing this for quite a long time, and for my company, it's always been if you wanted to do more, if you wanted to be more profitable, you just simply worked harder. You cracked the whip a little bit more, and that was my work ethic growing up, and that always worked. And we're nice guys. We treated our employees well. It just doesn't work anymore. You've all heard the term the Great Resignation. People don't want to work for the man anymore. It's just they want to be their own, their own, maybe not their own boss, but they want their own life. They want their own rules. If you want to go forward, if you want to propel your business forward, you have to look at the quality of life for your employees. You have to look at what Jerry said, the culture of your company, and you have to start there.
Go ahead.
I want to add one more thing. The thing that I like to think of is if you doubled your wage on everything, would it solve the labor shortage? And if the answer is no, then you have to look within the culture. I do that all the time. So if I would double my wage, would I have twice as many people? If the answer is no, then there's an issue inside the company, because people don't leave a lot of times for money. They leave for the culture.
And I really like what you said, Joey, about the answers are within. A lot of us have the answers within our own companies. About 4 years ago, our company went through we started a process that and it kind of back to those core values, that really discovered those core values. And it was about a 4-month process where our leadership team, brainstormed, and it was arduous to find out what are our company's core values. And as we set those core values, it's amazing how that has helped the culture, and everything goes against that measuring stick. If somebody has those core values, I want them on my team. They may not be in the right seat right now, but I want them on my team. And that's how you base your hiring, your firing, based on those core values. So thank you. Is there a question?
Yes, I just wondering if Jared talked a little bit about the career path and things that he's put together.
Yeah, I can talk about it. So what we do is, as part of the culture, we actually have a career path where it's actually completely laid out what each employee needs to do in the fabrication department to get a raise, so that they have their books. It's signed off by their manager, so they fill it out. If it's learning to polish, let's polish 10 pieces, then you know how to polish that. You need to learn a little bit of this skill or that skill, and they write it in their book, and it's completely laid out. So they earn their wage raise like on their own. And so like we get people, 3 or 4 months that are going up 3 or 4 pay increases, and they really like it because it creates, it's self-driven. It's completely clear on what they need to do to get a raise. We have some company culture stuff tied in the middle of that, like they have to attend some of our meetings. They have to do some of that kind of stuff that helps build that culture. But the installers have it as well, all the way through the CAD department. It helps us get well-trained people. They know what they need to do. And then it helps with retention because they know when they work for us when they're going to get a raise. They know what they need to do.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions on company culture? Yeah.
So kind of along those same lines, that's money driven, but there's only so many positions within a small business for fabricators, installers, and, template people. How do you keep the motivation there for year and year and year when there's not a lot of upward mobility for employees?
So let me repeat that question. So you're asking, like, year after year, how do you keep them?
Correct. Yeah.
So
Like promotion opportunities when there's really not a lot of promotion opportunities, especially at the management level.
yeah, that's going to be a little bit harder depending on the rate you're growing. So in the polish department, there's 9 levels, 9 or 8 levels. And so we like to think, somebody comes in and they can't get it done in a year. We tell them, like, hey, it's a career path. This is going to take you, a few years to complete. We're growing fast enough so we don't really have that issue. So, like, we're always expanding. We have some pretty big goals. So we don't run into that issue as much as like a small company would. I think it still comes back to a certain amount of you teaching them how to feel about it. So if you're not growing very fast, they're like, I want to grow. It's like, this is going to take you 3 years to master what you're doing right now. And my challenge is to have you think that way about it. And kind of, like, as they start chomping at the bit, if there's an opportunity, you can give it to them. But at the same time, a lot of times they just get this idea in their head that things should be a certain way when they're not. They don't understand. And sometimes you actually have to show them, like, this is the reality of it. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But
We've had that problem where you have a manager that's fairly high level and then they leave, and it's like, oh man, that was your golden employee, and they left for whatever other opportunity, and it is a challenge in this industry because you can only have so many. Your compensation level sometimes it can't be 200,000 for everybody or 150,000 for everybody. Some of the things that we've done in our company is, in addition to giving people good career paths, is really tried to incentivize performance and incentivize. I'm going to use the word profit sharing, but really, if you can help keep them engaged with, and it's not just about the money. It's mostly, a lot of our core employees have stayed because of the lifestyle. They've stayed because of the culture, because they would rather work for a smaller company than be a number in a larger conglomerate, and that's a big deal. We have a lot of our employees that will leave and then realize, the grass wasn't greener on the other side, and they come right back. And again, if that employee, exhibits those core values, we accept them back. There's other things, you can get into ESOP and things like that, but that's a tough one, and that's the only way we've dealt with it, is to try to incentivize and make them part of the family, and then the buy-in is much easier when they enjoy what they're doing. So, great question.
So, I recently I own Geo's Marble and Granite, but I acquired a tile company, and it's not specific to the fabrication, but the culture question. So when I came in, I'm very different from the previous owner. They were old school. They were not afraid to berate you and belittle you. And I came in and changed everything, and I've been really focused on efficiencies. But what I'm coming to now is I have a huge divide between my back and my front. And some of the older culture still remains, and the frustration that I'm not berating people or like giving them hell, and I'm really much more understanding. I believe that everybody wants to do a good job, so I don't think that it's necessary to, do that. But it's created this toxic work environment where there's a huge divide between the old school way of thinking from the previous owner that's been instilled in the old employees and my way of thinking and what I'm trying to instill in them. And it's really just been a struggle. It's just front and back, just at odds. The back and just wanting to continue that, hey, why aren't you reprimanding these people for these mistakes? Why aren't you fired? And I'm just like, you need to back off. But it's become really taxing because I'm a laid back owner. Like I'm very laid back. So to have people that are telling me how I need to run my business and discipline other employees, or even go I mean, right before I left, I had employees say to me, either you fire him or I quit. Before I came on Friday. Huh?
Yeah, so how do you marry two cultures effectively that sometimes are oil and water, sometimes very toxic? And I would ask the question, do you have your core values written down? Do you have, because we're going through a similar situation where we're buying or acquiring another company and marrying two cultures right now. And what's helped us, it's going very smoothly, but we started with core values. We started with, are those core values in alignment? Do the employees of this company share those core values? Are they something that they can, I'm going to use the word buy into, but it's amazing how when you have your core values established and part of your culture and written down and everyone understands what that means, then things start falling into place. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Sir, have you read the book Traction? Read it and see if it resonates with you.
Yeah, I would echo that.
I would say I would go back into where we were talking about the meetings, and you try to get everybody to work as a team. Your team will push the people out. If your team comes together, they'll push the bad apples out. We've found that over the years, that it's just having those meetings in our shop, really, it does so much. And I'm not really involved in a meeting. I just sit in them, and I tell them what they need to discuss, and then I just sit back and listen. And it makes it easy to get I mean, they really will. The team will push the people out that they don't want in their team. It's just like a baseball team or a basketball team or a football team. They either come together, or the majority of them will come together, and then the bad ones will end up just being gone. And you find a way to replace them.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's not an easy answer. But I think that book Traction, I think getting understanding and being willing to do what Chris has just described, being willing to let go an employee that may not be, they may be a performer, but they're souring your entire apple of baskets, or basket of apples. So that's a tough one.
Hey, and I get it. It's hard to let them go, because who are you going to replace them with, right? Yes, but anyway, I would say read that book, because if you can empower your team to make those decisions for you, just read it. See if it resonates with you.
I was going to say I agree with Joey on that one. Like, read that book. There's a lot of good things in there with establishing your core values. One thing that I would add is I believe that the toxicity is coming from at least one or two individuals. And so those one or two individuals are the ones that need worked with, that will change everything else. It's like the 80-20 rule. So if you can find the one to two people that are really causing all the problems and focus on them, they'll influence everyone else. It's quite interesting, and I've seen that quite a bit.
Great question. Any other questions on culture before we move on?
Sometimes another thing I think that a lot of employees see is that if they don't feel like they're in the right place in the team, then they might benefit from moving around to a different position or something, just to help change things up to get them to feel like they're a little more of the team in a better place.
I would agree with that. One thing, being a smaller shop like we are, none of our people have a title. Not even a manager in my shop. We use a program to run the shop, so I don't necessarily need a shop manager. I do have an office manager, and she is the only manager in my organization. But everybody gets cross-trained, so everybody has the same position. Everybody does quality control. Everybody runs the routers. Everybody runs the saws. The only real separation we have is from the shop crew to the installation crew. And we even cross-train those, except for our lead guy. He stays in the field, but we even swap out our installers so everybody knows. And it helps, because when somebody calls in sick or somebody wants to have a vacation, we're not struggling or changing our schedule, and we keep rolling through. So it works in a smaller, it's not necessarily able to do that in a bigger shop because there's so many employees, but in a smaller shop like mine, it really works out to have everybody not having a position or a title, and everybody, like I said, everybody works as a team.
And I think that's a great segue into Joey too. I think that's a great. I mean, whatever your company culture is, make it yours and own it. And there's no right answer here. What works for one company is not necessarily what works for another. But definitely, unmet expectations is what you're trying to avoid, and you're trying to really establish those common roles and goals, and establishing. Your employees know what's expected of them, and that's what creates frustration, is when they don't know that. So thank you. Joey.
Okay, so the leading questions were, what sets you apart in the industry and what makes you exceptional? And so when those questions were posed to us, I thought, well, Jared's going to talk about culture, which is great. He did a great job. So I thought, well, what should I talk about? Well, that's kind of more kind of front-end conceptual things. I thought, well, this is Fabricator Forum. Let's talk about fabrication. And the first thing I thought, well, I've been on a couple of these panels over the years, and I've sat in the audience on many over the years, and they always seem to gravitate towards the same things: porcelain, quartzite problems, things like that. And so I wanted to talk about something different today, and which kind of relates to what I do with my company, and which could be a lot of opportunities that are missed, I think, for a lot of people. Can I see a show of hands right now? Who has a CNC or a CNC saw? Okay, just about the whole room. Great, perfect. Of those people, who are using those machines for doing anything other than countertops? Okay, a few of you, great. Who would like to use those machines for doing more than countertops if there was money in it? Okay, a few. Okay, well, let me talk about what we do as a company, because I will tell you there's a lot of money in it. We do a lot of countertops. It is our bread and butter, and it probably always will be. But over the last several years, we've gotten into more of the dimensional market. And you can see by the pictures here, I'm pointing down here, but you're looking up here. What does that take to get the most out of your machines? When you buy one of these machines, you get the brochure, you open it up, and you see the pictures of all these crazy things those 5-axis saws can do, and you figure, great, I'm going to push the button, and it's going to kick this work out. And then you realize real quick, it doesn't really work that way, does it? You have to learn a little bit more about that. How can you make these machines productive? It's pretty simple, really, if you apply yourself and if you kind of know what you're getting into from the onset. So I'm going to kind of go over a couple things that we've learned over the last few years that have helped us kind of bridge that gap, getting out of the rectangle business and getting more into the more lucrative cubic business. The main thing is the CAD end of it. The CAD level has to rise considerably. Now your countertop guys they're not going to be able to really handle this level of CAD, not without some schooling. You can outsource it. If you do outsource it, it gets expensive, but that's not a problem. But just make sure that you watch who you're outsourcing it to, because there's two kinds of CAD guys in the world. You get the technicians and you get the artists. You need a blending of the two, because if you get the technicians, they're going to get you very precise drawings, but they don't understand the design aspect of things. And when you're working in this world, your clients need the design aspect of it. And you're going to get drawings that are very precise, but they don't really meet the needs of your client. And you're going to have revision after revision after revision. Your costs are going to go through the roof. If you get the artist, he's going to give you beautiful drawings that don't really meet the needs of the technical aspect of the project. Again, you're going to have revision after revision. You need a blending of the two. These guys are hard to find, so you have to search them out, but they are out there. Or you can send your best CAD guy to school, but trust me, this is pretty labor-intensive stuff. The guy that we use on some of our more complicated drawings, it's not unusual for him to go in and out of 6 or 7 different CAD programs to produce one drawing. I mean, he'll be into this one, he'll do a little bit of work, pop into this one, a little bit of work. It's crazy stuff. To me, that's the biggest hurdle. If you can separate yourself from that, then your foot's in the door. The second thing, the picture down is, the block of material, is you have to have relationships that can get you into cubic material, because you're not going to find that at your local distributors. If you're doing basic stuff like moldings and things like that you can do out of slab, you can do that all day long. But if you want to get into thicker work, thicker fireplaces, tubs, things like that, you have to get thicker material. You have to get relationships established in Italy or wherever that you can buy this material from. So you got to do that. The next thing that the next hurdle that you're gonna have to deal with is you're gonna run out of Z throw really quick. Most of your saws that you're using now for the countertop industry have a Z throw of about 8 inches, give or take, which is fine for doing countertops. And you can do a fair amount of dimensional work with that, but you're going to find that that is a very frustrating part of those saws when you try to make the leap into dimensional work. And so you're going to have to try to find, if you want to get serious about this, you're going to have to get into the next level of saw, a larger saw or something with a lot more Z-stroke. The saw that we have is a monster, but you don't necessarily have to go that big, but there are larger saws. And if you think that over time you want to maybe go into that route, if you're thinking about buying a new saw, you may want to think of the next model up. That's all I'm saying there. The next thing is when those pieces come off of the machine, they're useless basically. They're not really ready to be sold, and so really the trickiest part of all this work is how do you finish what comes off of the machine? Your guys that are polishing are all capable of doing this work, technically. But the thing is do they have the patience? Because even my best guys will get frustrated after about 2 hours because it isn't turn and burn like doing countertops. It's very tedious, it takes a long time, and it takes a lot of patience. So if you have one of those guys on your staff, keep them. So this kind of work it takes a long time. It takes a right individual to be able to do that. And then, just so, I don't know if any of you have seen the process of doing this. This is just a standard profile. Excuse me, I'm very animated sometimes. If you've ever seen how, like, a profile is cut, I'm sure a lot of you have, but, it's done with a saw. It comes like this, creates a profile, and then it cleans the profile using the shoulder of the blade going this way, which leaves you with a pretty clean surface. But it leaves you with a bunch of very light lines in it, which look very easy to sand out, okay? Trust me, they are not. They are, because really what they are is they're bruises, especially in Carrara marble. They're difficult to get out. So one thing, some advice I can give you, even if you don't want to get into cubic work, if you're just doing high-end marble countertops, you want to be able to get into at least some of the sculpting tools, the finishing chisels and what they call the rifflers. Because really, this is the only tool that's going to get these lines out of here before you can finish it out. Okay? If you're lucky and if you have a profile or a piece that you can get a grinder in, great. But that's not going to happen very often. More often than not, your piece is going to be intricate enough to where you have to get it in by hand. You got to get those lines out first before you can polish it. One of the questions I get a lot of is, and with a lot of my art pieces, if you've ever seen, is how do I get such a high polish? I do that with sandpaper. And I know a lot of the guys around here in Nevada and Southern California are really used to using sandpaper. But a lot of the shops that came up in the early 2000s and things like that are used to using, diamonds. And if you've ever seen an edge polished with polishing pads versus an edge polished with sandpaper, it's night and day. You can't get that really clear depth that you can with sandpaper. And you wouldn't want to do that in granite countertops or anything like that. But this is for sculpture or for profile work, okay? Sandpaper, Diaglow, you're up and going. So if someone wants to come up here and take a look at some of this, it's pretty simple, and I can certainly go afterwards and tell you how that's done. But I get those questions all the time if someone wants to know more about that. Next slide, please. So you can see that first picture, because it doesn't mean a thing if it don't got that bling. It's hard on the fingers, but in order to get that kind of finish, from start to finish, it takes a long time. But this work is incredibly lucrative, and there's no competition. Well, I can't say no competition. It's very little competition. So you're entering markets that are wide open right now. Right now, I hear everybody complaining that it's a rat race out there with countertop guys. The race to the bottom, you've all heard that. Not in this world. I name my price. In the church roll here, you have donor work. these clients, they're buying their way into heaven, so to speak. They're hey, how much? Here it is. I mean, it's true. That fireplace that you see up there, that was done on a GMM Intrasaw, so that's a standard bridge saw. So that kind of work can be done on your regular bridge saw. You can see the last picture of that the project fully installed in the church. So I just wanted to kind of touch base, maybe to seed a little bit of discussion, something other than the quartz site and the porcelain discussions that we've had for the last several years. If anybody's interested in talking a little bit more about this style of thing, that's it.
Yeah, any questions on Joey or for Joey?
Do you want to talk about pricing?
Pricing? Pricing is what you make of it. It depends on your market.
So that fireplace.
The fireplace, it's about $100,000. The picture below that fireplace is a commission I'm doing for Spokane City Hall. That's $250,000.
That's a market to look at.
Hey, Joe, would you suggest that we can take our rectangle programmer, operator, and just, say, hey, why don't you come in on Saturday for 4 or 5 hours? Here's a 2-inch piece. I want you to program something like that and work his way up to some of these fonts and stuff like that. You think that might be a way to train that old dog with a new trick, or?
Probably, yeah, because when you're dealing with like the profile work, like what you see here, that stuff's easy to draw, even for your CAD guys that you currently have. It just takes a little bit more thought process, a little bit more training, but stuff that they can easily learn online and from their current machinery manufacturers. Easy stuff to learn. It's going the next step beyond that to apply that to actual projects where it can get a little iffy. But 9 times out of 10, most of the things that you'll see within your home that clients are going to be asking for is profile work like this. Even like in churches and things like that, if you do like an altar, you have a fancy edge detail or something like that. It used to be in the day you had to get a diamond bit to do that. Now you tell the machine to do whatever you want. It's pretty simple. So most of the stuff is learnable. It's when you start getting into some of the drawings that you see on this thing that it gets a little even out of our league, and that's why we outsource it.
How much marble versus granite do you carve?
About 90% marble versus about 10% granite.
What type of challenges do you see in sourcing the materials? I mean, do you just have to? Is that a trial and error process, or where do you find the materials for your projects?
Over the years, we've established some very good contacts in Italy, and so it hasn't been a problem for us. The supply chain issue is an issue for us, and we're doing a church project right now that has a pretty elaborate shrine with solid columns and everything like that, which is way behind schedule. None of our doing, but it took a very long time to get the block over here. Luckily for us, we don't have a whole lot of the other problems that we would normally have, like in the residential market. This is a church. They're extremely understanding. There's really no timeline. It's a donor-based project. It will happen when it happens, and it was no big deal. It's like, when are you going to have the block? When are you going to have it done? When it's done, it's done. You never hear that with a homeowner, ever. So, I mean, I bring this to you because I believe it's an untapped world that you can explore.
Another question?
Yep. What kind of timeline do you give your customers?
We're very upfront with them from the get-go that we don't tell them we don't have a timeline, but we tell them this is throw everything you know about like the stone industry with countertops out the window, because those rules do not apply to this world. We'll give them a kind of an idea of what we think it will take, depending on the project, of course, but we give ourselves plenty of time because this is slow-going work. For example, that little niche that you see there, that was, I don't really remember, but it was probably about 3 or 4 days on the machine, and I think it was a good solid 2 weeks of me polishing it. So they're long projects, And that one, in the grand scheme of things, was kind of a fast project for us. The one we're doing now, the big shrine thing, we've been months on already. But it's also, you know, 100 grand, so it's worth it.
I have a question. How did you get that first project specified? Because now that you have a name and that you can kind of get it rolling, how did you get that first one?
Well, that's a great question. It's, you know, it's just kind of fate. You know, we had something present itself that led into another project, and with the church project specifically, a lot of the times the decision makers within the church projects don't really understand how to. They want to remodel or whatever, but they have old back altars and things like that, and they're thinking in their minds, well, I don't know how to go forward. I would like to remodel, but I don't know how to do that. This was done in Italy. I don't know what calls to make or whatever. So if you present yourself as the solution, then you'll find that those projects kind of lead into one project, which leads into another. Right before I came down here, I was visited by an architect with 3 more projects. So I mean, they just roll. I'm a firm believer in if you build it, they will come. Your showroom is also a very good source of pushing this type of work. You know, if people don't know that you do it, or they don't know that you can do it, they'll never buy it from you.
Hey, Joey, on the same lines with that simpler carving, the profiles you brought down front here, who specifies that, or how do you get the message out to those decision makers? Is it the architect? Is it homeowner? Where would you start to market work like that?
You know, the same way. Again, right before I came down here, we had another fabricator that you guys might even know of. Their builder had a job that had a profile similar to that around some casings that their fabricator couldn't deal with. Their builder doesn't use us, but they know that we're the only people that can handle that for us, so now he's my builder. So again, these lead you into markets that maybe weren't available to you before, but how we got that work, it's just because we were known for it.
In a situation where you are doing more of let's call it a design build, where maybe there's not an architect heavily involved, maybe somebody wants a fountain or something to that effect, how are you pricing the design aspect of it and going through those revisions on the shop drawings and the programming with the amount of revisions that could take place?
It depends on the project. We try to take a look at it beforehand and try to estimate what we think it'll take, and then it's typically a flat rate to begin with, and then it's an hourly charge after that. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, in this world for us, we are still very much figuring it out, because it's a hard thing to figure, because there's a lot of changes, there's a lot of unforeseen things, so you have to pad it kind of high and hope for the best. And so far, we've been pretty successful in pricing, but we don't have it down to a science yet. I don't know that anybody ever will have it down to a science, because this isn't like producing a countertop. It is very much art, and you have to factor in, you know, a certain amount of fluff, because you can't figure the amount of time it takes you to finish one of these projects. There's just too much variables.
These are beautiful designs, sir. So what kind of blocks do you use? Like, is there any specific recommendations, like you have to have a granite blocks, or the marble blocks, or quartzite blocks? Like, what kind of blocks do you prefer, basically, for these kind of designs?
We work almost exclusively in marble. We use a lot of the Italian marbles, just because they're nice carvable marbles. I just returned from Turkey with the intent of finding some nice carvable Turkish marbles as well. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever we think our clients may want, or what we think we can sell. No different than the slab market. And whatever we think the block can hold. You know, getting into this work, it's just like slab work. You know, you can see in the slab, you're going to have fissures and things like that. When you're getting into the block, they're a little bit more hidden sometimes. So you want to work with material that's a little bit more tried and true.
Thank you, Joe. Any more questions? Yeah, when Joey kind of explained this business model, I was just fascinated. I think, you know, man, I've been cutting stone since I was 16, but really it's been countertops, you know, and this is just a whole other world to see a lot of what Joey does and see the art side to it, to what stone can bring and what stone can do, which kind of segues into the next section. Your company, you know, the evolution of you as a company, and what we wanted to just quickly touch on is, where do you go to for the answers? Where do you know, there's a lot of associations out there. There's a lot of different things to plug into, and we feel like each one of them has their own place and their own purpose. Natural Stone Institute, and we're really fortunate to have a lot of representation here. I'm on the board of directors for Natural Stone Institute. We talk a lot about stone, about standards, about sustainability, about the whole stone industry as a whole, you know, and how that helps us as an organization is you know, is extremely valuable when it comes to the authority on natural stone. The dimensional, you know, the last session they talked about that dimensional stone design manual as the Bible, and that's where we go to for the answers. Just a couple weeks ago, I got a phone call from another competitor in our area, and they're going through litigation on some natural product that was installed, and they asked me to be an expert witness on that. But that's where we go to, that Natural Stone Institute, for the standards and what is it and is not acceptable. Rockheads is another association that helps with business development, with understanding how to take your business to that next level, with understanding how to peer group, to benchmark with other companies to see how you're doing. SFA, Joey's very actively involved with the SFA, and if you want to say anything about that, Joey.
Sure, yeah. I'm the executive director of the SFA. The SFA is probably best described as we are the world's biggest shop floor. So picture your own shops and picture the guys on the shop floor talking about what they talk about. They're talking about, how does this blade work? How's this machine? They're going to give you the straight answers. Sometimes they're not really politically correct, but it's the way that you kind of need to hear it sometimes, because if you go to one of these shows and you want to learn about how this machine is, you're going to get what the salesman's going to tell you, right? It might be legit, it might not be, but it's going to be the salesman's angle on that. The SFA, they're going to give you the real scoop from guys that are using that machine, good and bad. Same with the blade, same with this kind of glue. And as you know, the industry is constantly evolving. New products are coming on the market. Guys are using things. It's a way to figure out products and things like that, to, so you don't have to, make all the mistakes yourself. Sometimes you're using the collective resource of a lot of different people across a lot of different shops to try to come to, a mutual collective, power of everybody. So everybody's not just winging it. That's the SFA.
No, and empowering your team to plug into these organizations as well is a big deal. ASF is another one that's a great resource. Chris, do you want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, we're similar in some ways as the SFA. I was actually a part of the SFA for a long time, and we kind of spun off and done a little bit more focus on hand shops and trying to help them go digital and really have a strong focus in that sense. I know Chris Gray, we spoke a lot about your growth over the last year, and you've made some big jumps in the past couple years. But that's a real strong focus. We hold workshops at places that have CNC machines and saws, and we talk with people about how they can improve their shops, and a lot of similarities, just different ways that we run.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. And again, as a business owner, how do you evolve? How do you grow your organization? How do you grow your business? How do you decide do we want to look at a different type of niche? Do we want to look at a different type of and these are all resources that are available that each have a different purpose, but they're all spokes on that same wheel. And they all contribute to elevating the stone industry and the countertop and the fabrication industry. And that's how I see it, is we plug into, our company plugs into almost every one of these to find an answer for a different type set of problems. ISFA's another one that's a great organization and I think the biggest thing is the fact that you're here at this event shows that you're interested in growing your business. And the biggest thing is with any of these organizations, you get out what you put in, and it's great to see. We were at a dinner last night, and even if the only thing you pull away from these is the association of and the networking. That in itself is super valuable, because you never know when that's going to reap rewards. You never know when you're going to get a call 8 years down the road from an acquaintance you met sometime in the past at one of these events. So,
yeah, definitely, there's no way to really put a figure on the value of building a big network. There's always somebody to reach out to help. We had a saying when we first launched our site that your network is your net worth. And there's unlimited possibilities when you can get together and talk with each other.
So we wanted to just highlight 3 quick things that the Natural Stone Institute does. Is that they established a kitchen and bath Pinnacle Award category, and so this is where fabricators can shine. Countertop fabricators, kitchen and bath designers can shine. And the requirements, if you have a project that's within the last 3 years, catalog it, take pictures. We have flyers at the booth that kind of outline that. It would be great to see some kitchen and bath, some amazing kitchen and bath at the Pinnacle Awards. Accreditation is something that NSI or Natural Stone Institute does as well. That's a way to take your company and say, how do I measure up with other accredited companies? Joey's accredited. Pretty sure Jared, you're accredited. But it's a great way to say, how are we doing? Our company's accredited, and it's if you haven't been through the process, I'd look into it and recommend looking into it and going through it. It's very rigorous. It takes a long time, but it is a great way to put your company in check and say, how are we doing? The Natural Stone University is another thing that the Natural Stone Institute, Aaron is here today, but he's spearheaded a lot of that, and that ties into your company culture. How are you educating your staff? There are so many resources. Right now, the Natural Stone Institute has put together a syllabus for an internship program. How many of us talk about doing that but never actually do it, and never go to a local trade school or sponsor a high school class in countertops or in this industry? Great resource to plug into that Natural Stone University. So back to these questions. I think we've got about 5 minutes left or so. What are some of your biggest challenges? And let's roll these two questions. What are some of your biggest challenges, and what makes your company exceptional? What are some of the things that have worked for you guys as fabricators?
I have a really hard time getting rid of the scrap. No crush plants don't take it in my area. The landfill charges by the weight. So till now, the only viable solution I've had is buy a piece of land and just keep hauling it there. Just curious what other people do with their scraps.
Okay, go ahead.
I was recommend looking for a demolition company. You can usually find a demolition company that'll come and maybe you can work out a deal. It's not going to be free, but maybe you can work out a deal to rent a dumpster from them, and then they'll take it back and crush the material. The biggest challenge is probably going to be your quartz, because a lot of those companies don't want to take the quartz into and run them through those crushers, because it tears those jaws up. But that's a good solution if you have any companies like that in your area, like companies that tear down brick buildings or they tear up roads. They've got those crushers on hand. Instead of trying to bring one into your shop, just find a way to get it to them.
Yeah, that's what we do, Chris, is we crush ours. But to me, this is kind of a sales tax question. We crush ours for sales tax reasons. If you've ever been through a sales tax audit, we save almost $180,000 a year by doing that. And the way we do it is you have to have a system that tracks, you know, because when you and this it varies based on your auditor, but for us in our area, you know, we have to know exactly what was of a 50 square foot slab, what square footage was installed as real property, what square footage went back on the shelf to be potentially reused for a sale, and what percentage went back into the scrap pile, is that, you know, what do you throw out? And what we do is, rather than paying the sales tax, because technically, and again, this is going to be area dependent, you are supposed to pay the sales tax on the amount of material that you throw away at your purchase price. So rather than, you know, paying, who wants to pay 7%, assuming you're buying non-exempt, but assuming you buy who wants to pay your 7% on $20 a square foot of something you're going to throw away? But if you crush it and then sell it as a retail sale, you can charge that 8% on $2 a ton, and that's how we do it. Is we sell it to landscapers, we sell it to a sister company, and we crush it. It costs us about 20 grand. You know, we do it about every 3 years, and we bring in a big crushing machine, and we crush it and then resell it as a retail sale. And that way, when you're audited, you can validate and justify where every square foot of that material and that product went. So that's how we deal with our scrap, with our remnants, and we use it we divert the tax savings there. Go ahead.
Yeah, my biggest challenge is staying on top of trends in the industry. I'm fairly new to it, so I guess along those lines, what's been the most interesting, you know, innovation, product, vendor that you've seen in the last year, and who or what are you most excited to see here at Coverings?
Yeah, that is a good question. There hasn't been a whole lot of changes in the last 10 years. I mean, a little bit of technology changes as far as drive systems for machines, but there really hasn't been. White quartz. that's a trend.
I'll be happy to see the white quartz trend go away.
I think the biggest thing is the countertop industry isn't really that old, and so there still is machine manufacturers and processes and systems, I think, that could get better. That's kind of just keeping the same as the countertop. That hasn't really changed, but the processes and systems to build it, I think, is where the innovation is going to be.
And I would say I think that it's maturing fast, the industry. I mean, you know, I remember the day when it was, you know, how do you set up saw jets were not a thing. You know, water jets, it was water jet one machine, a saw the other machine, and how do you set up a slab smith to work, or how do you set up your photo nesting to work with that, you know, and how do you tie the two together? We had a projection laser that was, you know, we didn't want to print, but we bought the product from the vendor, and we said, how do we set this projection laser and this photo nesting material, you know, this up? And he says, well, I don't know, you're the first one that's bought it. And I'm like, what? You know, you mean you don't have a manual for this? And I look at those days, and we relied heavily on SFA to set that up, to help work through that process. I look at those days versus now, when there's a lot of companies that have done that, and there's a lot of resources for a new company. You know, like you plug into those associations. That's the biggest thing that I can say is to plug in, and the more you plug in, the more you get back.
To answer that question, now that I thought about it, the scanners coming online now are interesting to me anyway. You know, taking place of the big photo stations that we used to have, which were, you know, I think a lot of guys have the problems with. They take up a lot of space, and you have a lot of lighting issues with, and those are solving those issues. We have one on the way, but like everything else, they're the victim of the supply chain thing. So, but that's kind of a new innovation I think is a good one.
The other thing I would say is there's a lot better tools to organize the back end. You know, the ERPs and the back. That's been a huge improvement.
Yeah, the software, you know, is kind of the unsung hero. It happens kind of underneath everything. You know, even things simple as like a 5-axis saw, when you think about how easy that is to run these days, if you go back 10 years ago, to program a 5-axis saw would be incomprehensible. You know, to cut a miter on a 5-axis, you'd have to have programmed that, and you'd have to have gone to Harvard, you know. But now it's so intuitive. And that stuff just happens naturally now. Think where we will be in another 10 years. So like the stuff I was talking about will be just, you know? Yeah. So software is always going to be, I think, a big innovator in our industry.
I wanted to clarify that question a little bit more. Are you talking more trends like on the fabrication side, or like colors, materials, just anything? Everything? Because I think there's two sides of that. Like, what is the colors and trends, but what's the new machines to make it easier? Because I think that's going to be a balance of like make sure you're selling the right things. But
I think they have this installation robot that that is you guys have seen it, right? You know. But I do think the material handling has improved a lot. You know, material handling is on the installation side, because that's where we struggle, is getting you know, installers that are excited about what they do and doing it day over day. So, time for one more question. Last question, anybody?
here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on sealers. What do other fabricators offer, and what customer expectations do they give for sealers? As far as enhancing sealers and non-enhancing, because the enhancing darkens and whatnot. So if anybody had any recommendations, I'd like to hear it. That's all I had.
Outside of quartzite, you know, we, as a general rule, we use Pro Seal, 10X Pro Seal, not anything enhancing, because if down the line they spill some sort of chemical that happens to take part of the sealer off, then the customer themselves can't seal over top of it. But 10X has been a great product. We used Miracle for a long time. That was a pretty great product. Any type of impregnating sealer is your safest bet.
Yeah, and this I think I'd probably direct to one of the forums too, because, you know, like Joey said, you're going to talk to a salesperson of a sealer and get a different answer than you'll get from an actual fabricator or somebody using it. You know, but I think the sealers are you know, we use a different brand of sealer, but I think the sealers have come a long ways from where they were, and I think they are they do a great job. But I'd throw that question out on the forum if you're having, and specific materials may have a different answer too.
Yeah, you said outside of quartzite. Our question would be Mont Blanc, Infinity White. What do you seal it with?
5 times with Pro Seal, and it still don't help.
Yeah, we use Pro Seal, but then we don't use that for those. We've tried a different one.
My understanding is
Seal has been decent. I've actually had quarries start sealing with Brazil.
it still don't help, because once you cut it, it's soaking in anyway. Now, I have heard that Dry Treat is doing a lot of experimenting right now to take care of this issue. Dry Treat from DuPont.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, and booth. Sorry, there we go. Booth 529 is where the NSI can be found, and if you want any more information on the Pinnacle Awards and the Natural Stone Institute. But thank you for your time, and appreciate it.
These profiles that are up here, I'm not going to haul back on the plane. So if anyone wants them to play with, take them.